Wow. I thought I had a favorite Points of Light song, and now I have a new one. So, Mr. Roush, if you would be so kind. Today we get to play my favorite game, which is where you guys write the talk, essentially. This is where you get to ask me anything, and I will specify anything about the philosophy. It doesn't matter what I had for dinner last night. If there is anything about, God, the universe, and everything that is confusing to you, that I have set up here that doesn't make sense, that you would like explained, today is your day. Well, this is one of many days, but this is the most recent day. And one of the best things about this is since we didn't have a theme that Point of Light was going to have to kind of work their way around, we get the really good whatever you want to do, guys. So, who would like to start us off? And by the way, part of the game is making Jackson run from back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So our first question is all the way in the back, unless you're just stretching. And I will ask that you speak into the microphone. Right now we are welcoming our YouTube folks, and they will not be able to hear you if you're not in the microphone. One of these days, we're going to be able to Facebook Live this so that people can type in their questions. Wouldn't that be cool? Okay.
Do you want me to stand or no?
If you want to.
No, okay. Actually, I'm just new here, so
Welcome.
I see behind you the V, and I wondered what that is. I wondered the first day, and now I'm wondering again. So, is that a relevant?
Okay, so
is that a relevant question?
No, that's an awesome question. The in-joke is that it stands for V for visitors, and we're waiting for the mothership. That is not, however, the truth. It's just more fun to say. This is, can we move this up so that people can see it? This is what we call our teaching symbol. It is not a holy icon or everything. It will not cry tears of blood or anything, but what we know as religious scientists is that God is forever, God by whatever name, is forever creating. And this is how we think about the act of creation. So the top part is the area of pure ideals, the Platonic ideals like love and power and peace, those things that are neither male nor female, they're just the highest thought that can exist within spirit. Some people call that the God mind, spirit. The V is how spirit, the idea, moves into being. So the middle part is, if the top part is creator, the middle part is the act of creation. The middle part's a verb. And then the bottom part is the created thing, this stuff, all of your experiences, all of the people around us that have ever been, all of our belief systems, our bodies, and the body of our affairs. What is important to remember is that the V has a second side. So once you have an experience, you take it back up through the act of creation and kind of evaluate it and cognate it and get some, maybe some knowledge about it. This is where you get recommended about 50 different books because we're religious scientists. And then the top part is where it goes back into the divine idea, and this is what you have learned. Now it's wisdom. It's not just an ideal, it's wisdom, which is an embodied divine idea. And if you notice, there's a tiny little hook on the end, because then you do it all over again. Over and over and over. Because the first part is involution. This is God taking on form. The second part is evolution. All of us growing through the process in which we return to our divine state. We have lived and learned and figured out that we're not separate from God. And when the master teacher Jesus, for instance, said, quoting the Psalms, "Know ye not that ye are gods, and the sons and daughters of the Most High?" He was giving us instructions not to worship him so much as to do what he did. You ever have that where like you're in a teaching moment and somebody that you absolutely adore is like, oh, I'm just so impressed with what you could do, and you're like, please do it yourself next time. I had a mentor who was a healer, and the only thing she would do, she would heal you. She would work with you through, she got me walking again basically when my sciatica was bad. But I had to agree that I would learn to do it for myself as well. That is what this teaching requires. Now, the most important part of this symbol, as all of you know, I believe, is the circle that goes around the outside. Because that reminds us that whether it's the physical world, the act of creation, or the divine creator, it's all God. Being a human is no less divine when you are taking out the trash than it is when you are sitting in meditation for the 12th or 13th hour and can no longer feel your extremities. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Awesome. Great first question. Okay, so Nancy has a question. While he's walking up, I'm going to just remind you that Ernest Holmes is the founder of our philosophy, so he's the one who came up with the teaching symbol. Actually, he was working for the city of Ventura at the time, so if you take out those two lines, that's the symbol for the city of Ventura. It's all God, guys. Sermons and stones. I am teaching the Essential Ernest Holmes course. This is a compendium of his writings over the course of about 40 years. If you're going to take that class, it should come with a warning label because we're going to do it in double time. So we're going to do 2 classes per week instead of 1, and it is one of the heaviest reading and homework classes we have. So fair warning. We're going to fly. It's going to be a hoot, but I just think I should warn people about what they're getting into. Okay, Nancy.
Reverend Kathleen, I absolutely love the concept of for something and against nothing. I just don't have a clue what that means.
Okay, so that is a quotation from something called Sermon by the Sea. It was one of Ernest Holmes' last talks at a place called Asilomar. Has anyone been to like Monterey Bay and they know where Asilomar is? Okay, you know it's like a magical place, right? It's better than Disney World. Well, Epcot maybe. But one of his last talks, he was standing there in, I believe it was the chapel, and he did this amazing talk about how he was, in the beginning he's asked, so if you could explain God to somebody, what would it be? And he looked out the window at a tree and he said, it's the squirrel sitting up in that tree right now. So, by the way, if somebody is sitting next to you in meditation and goes, squirrel, they're reminding you of God. I'm not just messing with you. Well, yes, I have been known to do that. Mostly to my sister, though. Sorry, I just had a squirrel moment. So, in his talk, he got to the point where he was saying, it's very nice to come here together and have this experience of divinity and remember through our music and our work and our talking to each other that we are one, that this is a divine experience, this life on earth. It's a different thing when you get to take it out into the world because it might feel like separation again. And so what he got into as he got rolling, because he did, he was talking about how to be in the world. And how if we can go out into the world, having dealt with our own stuff, we go out into the world without any judgment of anyone. Without needing to make anybody else or anything else wrong, we go out there and see the divine. And as he got into saying, if you will show me someone who has healed his own soul, who is able to interact without any sense of condemnation because of his faith, or her faith, I will show you the next Savior, the next Christ, and the Redeemer of my soul. Show me someone who is for something and against nothing, and I will show you the Redeemer of my own soul. Someone at whose feet I can sit and learn without fear of judgment. That's where it comes from. It is like a 5-page, amazing talk. Someday I'm going to be like that when I grow up. If I grow up. And And I can share that with you if you'd like me to email it to you, because I go back to it every so often. He's just, if you're used to doing public speaking, you can feel the roll start going about 10 seconds in, and then it just doesn't ever stop. But as Reverend Leslie talked about last week, when we go out into the world to do social justice or social, what we call social uplift, it's a hand up, not a hand out. We go out having prayed ourselves up so that we can be for something and against nothing. So that we're not going out to rescue anyone who's broken, and we're not going out to fix anyone who, to quote Reverend Leslie, is just stupid because they disagree with our incredibly intelligent opinion, right? It's we go out into the world to meet the divine wherever it is and wherever we are, and make sure that that oneness comes through. Good? Answers? Kinda? Okay. So we have two over here, so we need somebody over here to go in between them. Just kidding. Mr. Bishop.
You mentioned during the candlelighting, I heard you mention the word mindfulness, and you hear that a lot these days, and I'd like to know your take on that word.
Okay. So you know how often in life there's that committee in the back of your head that's going, me, 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 me? No. No, well, maybe you know somebody, not anybody here, that is so busy fussing over what happened in the past or worrying about what's going to happen that you're not here now. If you can be mindful, if you can just stay in this moment without fear of the future or angst around the past, you are being mindful. There is a Buddhist tradition, and forgive me if I get this wrong, I think it's called a tenzin. It's the tradition passed through one of the Buddha's original followers who was the chef for them, or the cook. And it's an entire spiritual tradition. And so there's a modern day one who has a story on Netflix somewhere. I want to think his name is like Edward Brown or something like that. And he talks about when you're stirring the rice, just stir the rice. When you're cutting a carrot, just cut the carrot. That is mindfulness. You give your full attention and you stay present and aware of exactly what you're doing. That's what mindfulness is. Is that helpful? Good. Mr. Joslin. Mr. Anderson. Sorry.
You mentioned music, so my question is for Jackson, actually.
So I'm going to ask you to stand up and so that the camera can see you too, sir. Jackson, anyway.
We know how the minister became part of Science of Mind. What led you to be part of Science of Mind? And then the second question is, how do you determine the music for Sunday as well as being, quote, talent scout, getting special music here?
I can tell you the answer to that second question is very well. Thank you very much.
You clearly think that my brain can hold on to things for more than 30 seconds at a time because I can't remember the first question.
How did you come to Science of Mind?
Oh.
By car.
I got here because I was kind of already here before I got here. And I was told about this place. I was told about this place in a very small window that opened up. I'm going to stay cryptic like that, but a very small window opened up and said, "Hey, you ought to go check this place out." That window that opened closed almost a week or two after that, but it was open long enough to say, "Hey, you ought to go check this place out." So I sat back there and just was like checking it out. And it was the candle lighting that I think it is for so many people. It was the candle lighting, like, oh yeah. This is the kind of spot. So it was the candle lighting that really was the thing, you know. the music, selfishly, I would say a lot of times it's like, here's the tune I need this week. You know? And so, and then I make the assumption, well, if I need it, someone else in here probably does too. You know? So, you know, I mean, there's so many songs that over the course of the week that will pop in my head, you know? And Ken Kasner was the one who was kind enough to, one day my AC went out and I was up on my roof basically singing, only good can come of this, only. And the phone rings, it was Ken Kasner. I'm like, Ken, you're not going to believe this. I'm up on my roof singing only good can come of this. You know what I mean? So the songs, I pick them because I need them, you know? And then I get feedback from people telling me, you know, what songs have meant a lot to them. There was a long time I had to keep reprinting for my book, the words to One Power, because every week someone would, hey, can I have the words to those? So I'd give them and I'd be like, yeah, I'll go print some more. And so I know what songs, too, that people will come up and say how much the words to a particular song meant to them, and so that's my clue, like, I know they want to hear that one again. How do I get the soloist here? Weren't we talking about that? I was like, how did we meet? I can't remember. She's like, I called you. And she's like, yeah, but the first place that took us was Mesa. I said, only because you didn't call me first. So that's amazing because, you know, people will, you know, we get some great soloists that move away, and over my tenure, there's so many people that have moved away, you know, that you're like, oh, now we're taking a hit. And then within a week or two, someone shows up that's like, whoa, you know, so they just keep showing up. I don't know. But you do, you know what I mean? You make it happen, so it just happens, so that's it. Was there something, this is your line. Did that answer your question? I can't remember what the question was. So,
and that's the problem with going off on these tangents that I do, because they're fun.
I can't remember.
The other thing that I'm going to brag on Jackson for a second. We were looking for a new music director because the other one, the one that we had, much beloved though he was, needed to move on. So we had a group of people, and I was kind of doing a pre-screening. And in the middle of Jackson calling me, first of all, he didn't know who Michael Gott was. He's like, yeah, never heard of him. It's like, yeah, whatever. In the middle of the interview, somebody came up to Jackson and was trying to talk to him while he was on the phone. And he explained to me a few minutes later that that was one of his littles, that he acted as a big brother to someone, and they still kept in touch with him. Also, I had seen on his resume that he was my age, and I needed somebody else my age in the room. And that part of his resume said that he was in a couple bands. One was a cover band for the Grateful Dead, another one was Pink Floyd, and he also did reggae. I was just like, yes! We will learn to clap. We're working on that, right? We're still working on that. But he also talked about having played Rachmaninoff in high school. And so I knew that this was somebody who had really studied his craft. And by the time he came in the next week to audition for the committee, he was playing a Michael Gott song. So obviously he cared enough to learn the music. And after that, it was all just, you know, love. Plus, he's from back east, so we could talk.
Now back to my regular job of walking around this room with this microphone.
Do we have... Okay, so there's a question over here in the corner. Thank you for being on that side of the room. It's my job to push people's buttons sometimes.
Hello. I was wondering when you knew that Science of Mind was for you and you decided, I mean, did you have like a proverbial tap on the shoulder? I need to be a minister. When did you know that you were going to be so good at what you're doing, Kathleen?
Aw.
Well, I truly feel that way.
Okay, so I actually started, like Jackson, I was studying this stuff before I studied it. In undergrad, and this was another divine orchestration thing, I went to a tiny little college and I was studying psychology. I had been studying theater arts, my happy place, but I was under the impression that I'd never make a living on a stage. Famous last words. And then I was studying languages. I was specifically studying Spanish, but the first class was at 7:30 in the morning, so I switched majors. And then I was studying psychology, and the guy who was teaching psychology at the time had to take a leave of absence because he threw out his back by sneezing. And he was going to be gone for a year. So this guy by the name of Tobin Hart, who was still working on his doctoral dissertation, came and taught, and his thing was spiritual psychology. This is spiritual I mean, if you needed an elevator speech for what do you believe in or what do you teach here, it's spiritual psychology that is multi-faith. We draw from all faiths. So it's multi-faith spiritual psychology. So in my undergrad years, I got to work with Tobin for years. And interestingly, it was his book about the secret spiritual lives of children that was used when I took youth and family ministry during my ministerial process, like a decade and a half later. And the book was written in the beginning about the little girl that I used to babysit for. So I'm like, I know her. I told him she was seeing angels. So I knew that the psychology part was for me. It took me a few years to figure out, to find Science of Mind. Like many of you, I saw the sign, people told me to go there, and I ignored it for as long as humanly possible. And at one point, I was just kind of desperate for a life and showed up in a Science of Mind center on a Wednesday where they were actually talking about A Course in Miracles. But the person who was teaching was talking about celebrating your inner... And I was like, oh, I'm home. that you could be real. And I was taking classes and volunteering before I ever sat down on a Sunday. Because they really kind of got me with the classes. So that's, and then I just kind of kept taking classes, and eventually they make you into a minister if you do that. And then I came here and really started the learning process. So last question, please.
I have been in this study for a while, and I have read many articles and books, and the words new thought are continuously used. Now, my feeling with what I've read is this originated so long ago in so many avenues in areas, and as we know, transcendentalists. So is there a possibility of changing that descriptive 2 words of new thought into anything other than those 2 words?
Knowing us, yeah. We change names all the time. We like to play with words. A lot of people now call it New Thought, Ancient Wisdom. Because we didn't make this stuff up, and Ernest Holmes was very clear. This is not a new religion or anything like that. This is a synthesis, and he uses the word synthesis, of the wisdom he had access to from across the ages. So he loved Plotinus. He adored Emerson. And he read pretty much everything in between. He also loved Sri Aurobindo. And he would just take everything he could get, and this was pre-Google, so it took a little longer, and just figured out what they all had in common. New Thought is, we're part of New Thought. Like Christianity has everything from Mormons to Catholics to everything else. New Thought has us and unity and divine science and Christian science, and we're all a little bit different. But the idea is twofold. One, we have a new thought about our own experience of the divine. And secondly, we take a new look and a new understanding of the teachings of the ages. So Jesus is central to many of our, especially if you go to Unity, is central to New Thought teachings, but not as the Savior who's going to fix us. You guys have all heard me say, I fixed my cats, I'm done. I'm not here to fix or save any of you because you don't need it. You're not broken. What you need is to have a new thought and a new way of experiencing the world so that you can see your own divinity, so that you can see the magnificence of your soul, and so that you can see and have a new, deeper understanding of just how much God or good there is in the world for you or for us. And knowing us, you know, there's something that actually happened once. They were trying to make the ministers wear something kind of like a uniform for all the graduations and stuff. They wanted our black robes to look the same. They gave up on that after about 5 seconds, because even if we all started with the same black robes, within a week, we all knew who exactly was going to have the boa attached to it, who is going to have sequins, who will have sewn on the different world religions all over the robe. So we're lucky that are not all, like, you know, they gave up. Let's just say it that way. So that being so, because we get to have a new thought, I'm going to take us into prayer. As usual with Q&A, we went a little long, but that's okay, right? Good, because I can't give you the time back. So what we know, the big question is, how do we live this stuff? And so one of the teachings we have, one of the tools we have, is affirmative prayer. So I will invite you to close your eyes if you want to, and feel into, just take a moment to experience the oneness that is here. And understand that the consciousness that is thinking in your head is a divine consciousness. We're all sharing that consciousness at some level. This is what we call the one mind. And within the one mind, there is no harm to be done and no harm that has ever happened. Because the one mind is the one power and presence that is not just this universe, but any other universe that exists. It is forwards and backwards in time. It is right now, and it is something that exists outside of time as well. This one mind, this one power, this one presence is the only power and presence. And it is experienced as love. We experience it as that still small voice, or if we ignore the still small voice, as the cosmic 2x4. It is that truth that lives within us and can never be truly desecrated, although we try and ignore it sometimes. It is this oneness that is rising up within us now that reminds us that we are part of that ineffable being, that whatever it is we call God. We are part of that. We cannot be separated from it. And that is the essential truth of who we are. And because we cannot be separated from our God or our good, everything else falls into line. The right singers show up with the right song. The right teacher shows up at the right time with the right class. And in this moment, I celebrate that this is what Spirit is and how it works. It is the cause behind all effect. And it works according to the laws of cause and effect to create this life through us, as us, and for us. And so I rest knowing that what already is the divine, is a being that is for each and every one of us, for us experiencing peace and love, wholeness and health, abundance of every kind. It is this truth on which I rest and in which I know all of us can rest. And so I am just grateful for Spirit being what it is and the inevitable evolution into a fuller expression of God for each and every one of us. That inevitability is truth. And so I just bless it all and I call it good. And together we affirm, and so it is.